the meeting of the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency on January 25th at 3:01. Let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Call the roll.
Director Finch?
Oh, welcome. Come in.
Director Daddy?
Present.
Director Whitman?
Present.
He's
Director Filkey?
Here.
Chair Hages?
Here. Okay, the next item is director announcements. Peter, do you have anything?
Nothing new.
Okay. Jim?
Nothing other than I did meet with Casitas in regards to the ongoing LAFCO issues for Ojai Water Conservation District, just on a cursory discussion.
Andy?
Yeah, we have a new city manager, Ben Harvey. Seems like he's going to be a good guy. We'll see how much involvement, if any, he has with our water issues.
Bob?
none from the district.
I don't have any from Casitas either. Okay, general manager comments?
Hi, good afternoon. I wanted to let you know a couple things. One is we had bought a new computer for the office and upgraded the whole Microsoft Office software suite. One of the things was the Access database program, which our old Access is not compatible with because it's from 2006. So, you know, a few things have happened since then. So I found a firm that specializes in helping people with their access problems, and I want to engage them to help us get it transferred over to the new computer and to the updated version, and look at maybe first do that assessment and get it going so we can get the first quarterly statements out on the new version. So there will be a little expense up front with that within my signing authority, and then they'll prepare a assessment that will tell us kind of what the next steps would need to be if I wanted to make it as robust as I do, so we can do queries and reports and make changes to the statements easily. So I'll bring that back if there's going to be more expenditures. The other thing I wanted to bring up was our process for the well verification. A few applications have come up that are, substantial amount of pumping that they want to do, but there's not a good process in place to do that on the staff side. There's some things that we've run into, for example, if they are required to prepare a report from another hydrogeologist to comply with the executive order. I'd like to have, either Jordan or Dudek or both possibly review them for their adequacy. Does it make sense to have Dudek put it in the model, to run the model, to see what that proposed pumping would do overall? It needs to be thought through, because I have 2 applications already pending with significant quantities. And there's also a cost to the agency associated with that. There's my time, if we do have a third party review them, that's benefiting that property owner. And I don't think that should be a burden that everybody who pays the agency fees should necessarily have to absorb. I'm just throwing out ideas here, but what I want to do is put together some kind of policy or practice for processing those down the road, and I'm open to your ideas and thoughts about that as well as Jordan's.
Okay.
And then, next month's meeting, I will be doing remotely from Texas. That's all.
From where?
From Texas.
All right, thank you. Next item is Basin Status Report. Jordan?
All right. Thank you, Chair Hedges. I'm going up to share the screen here. Okay. Titled today's presentation, Up Off the Highest of Lows. And as the title implies, that today we're going to talk about how we've kind of come off of the nadir of 2023. And while we found that the absolute lowest amount of storage we had was mid-December, it was still higher than many peak years, many high amounts of storage we had in years, and certainly higher than just about every of the previous nadirs in the history of the basin. Probably the closest one that came through was about 1983. And interestingly enough, that was sort of the beginning of the drought of the 80s into 90. And we've already surpassed that thus far. We'll get into that. But we're up off of the highest of lows. This year so far, we've got close to 9 inches on the valley floor, upwards of 13 on the ridge above the basin. So we're marching on along. I think we're still technically below average to date, owing in large part to a relatively dry fall, although the winter and spring are still looking ahead to be pretty wet. What does that do for the basin here? Our longer-term hydrograph, as I mentioned, we were able to discern a December 15th, 2023 low of 94.1 feet, and that's higher than most years' annual highs, but it's still well below our April 12th, 2023 peak, 37.78 feet. We've come off 6 feet off the bottom thus far, bringing us up to 87.96 feet in the Key Well area, or about 83% of basin capacity at 66,400 acre feet. So how do we know that? We've replaced the logger in the Elrod well, so we get a hydrograph that looks like this. When we have this high of resolution, this is just since October, you can see only about 4 or 5 pumping cycles that occurred since that time, but yet the decline of, in that particular well, the decline of groundwater levels through that mid-December point is interesting. You'll notice how many how much fluctuation there is as the water level is receding. And that speaks to the interference that we see from pumping wells. While this well only pumped 3 or 3.5 times during this cycle, or was pumping when we put this logger in at least, you can see that sawtooth nature of the pattern due to other wells pumping influence on this particular well. And that's not insignificant because that's something that we have data on interference between these wells. And it's something that is part of the forthcoming permit applications and the interference issues that Julia alluded to. Once the recharge starts and we start seeing the water levels come back, there's a lot less pumping in the basin, so that a grading hydrograph as it goes up to the right is much smoother. You don't see that interference. People aren't having as much demand. It's raining. It's cooler. There's less pumping. And of course, just as we were measuring this, we started to see that little jump toward the end, indicating that we're starting to see the recharge really come into the basin after the month of lag time between the storms, where we got that 6 inches or so in December, and today. So we're looking forward to a continued rise in water levels here. What does that mean balance-wise? Measuring this week, at Gridley, we had 3.12 CFS, Senior Canyon 2.16 coming in, Thatcher, little over 1 CFS, Reeves, 1.71 CFS. Outflow out of Montgomery, or the Fox Barranca or Stewart Canyon, is 0.2 CFS, relatively small. Surface flow out, 5.6 CFS. So we're getting a lot more in, at least in these measurements, than we are seeing exit. And the measurements we're taking are, of course, at reasonably accessible points where these creeks are visible entering the basin. There's still quite a bit of underflow that's going on and probably loss to the basin from these creeks upstream of each of these monitoring points. But in some, we very easily and conservatively measure 8.2 CFS of recharge to the basin, whereas the outflow is, I didn't total that one correctly, but it's 5.8 CFS. So we've got a significant amount of components that are entering the groundwater system. What does that look like in the creeks? Wanted to share this way. The creeks flowing out of the basin are continuously flowing over the furthest westerly portion across the perch system, or the SWESI, southwest uppermost saturated zone. The surface flow in San Antonio Creek proper begins now, after some flashy complete flow, starts to daylight over the perch system south of the 150 or Ojai Avenue. On the influence side, this is what we've got. We've got all of these creeks that are finding their way toward the center of the basin and then completely infiltrate into the basin where those blue lines terminate. So I wanted to give that as a sort of a graphical depiction of what that surface flow looks like, rather than just throw out a bunch of fun CFS numbers that on the previous slide I didn't add up right. All right, so back to this pretty cool graphic that we work on. Every time I see this, I say this, I see something new. But what I like about this particular curve today is that all of the main aquifer components, the recharge from the area of the San Antonio Creek Spreading Grounds Rehabilitation Project, the depth discrete monitoring wells, these are the two highest points on this hydrograph. So right here is one of the main, the basal alluvial aquifer at the San Antonio Creek Spreading Grounds. This is this more solid line is the bedrock well that's up there, so it's actually a Sespe Formation well. And then this graph is the Elrod well put on this scale. And you'll notice that each of these has a component of rise of at least 10 feet in absolute increase in water levels, or shallower water levels. Compare that to the discharge side, where it's about 3 feet of rise. That's at the main portion of the aquifer and at the depth discrete monitoring well in town, in the center, south central depth discrete monitoring well, Fulton Street right here. The surface water daylighting point, which is this blue creek, blue square line, and then the actual flow and the perch system. So all of those have a component of about 3 feet of rise, whereas the main aquifer sees about 10. And that just speaks to the bifurcation between the two systems stratigraphically. What does this look like graphically again here in real time? Here's the this week's flow over the dry Ladera Road crossing and the inflow to the grate there. And that's the sum of the Gridley and Senior Canyon flows. Here's the flow looking north over San Antonio Creek from the Grand Avenue Bridge. Turn around to the south and it's dry at this time when we took this photo yesterday. And then of course the discharge point at the exit port of the basin, that is about a 1.5 feet per second, relatively slow, moderate. We still got a long way to go in this particular season.
Oh, you're expecting a phone call. You can close everything you got. Anything
Okay,
you want.
there's my cue. Any questions?
Oh, that, yes, thank you. I'll do that.
But he's not muted. Walter Peterson.
All right, thank you, Jordan. Anyone have any questions? All right, the next item is public comments. This is public comments on items that do not appear on today's agenda.
Hello, how are you? My name is Bert Handy.
Hi, Bert.
Are you guys familiar with the Small GSA Coalition?
No, I'm not.
Okay. The Small GSA Coalition is a statewide group of small GSAs. And Brian Bonde is the director in both the Upper Ventura River GSA and also the Mound GSA. He is a member of that coalition. And I believe it would be advantageous for Ojai to check that coalition out for some of the issues being a small GSA. Thank you.
Thank you, Bert. Any other comments? Okay, we'll move to the consent agenda. Anyone have any questions or comments on the items on the consent agenda?
The only thing I wanted to mention was that the minutes from 2021 should be the last batch to get us all caught up on meeting minutes.
Good.
I had one question on the distributions. And my guess is after what you talked about on the computer, the office supplies for 1380, that was the computer. That's, once you started talking, I was guessing that. Okay.
Any other questions? Any public comments on this item? Not, can I have a motion?
Move.
Second.
Call the roll?
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes, with the exception of B, C, and D, which I abstain.
B, C, and D.
Yeah, those are well before my time on the board.
Minute.
Director Filkey,
Yes.
did I say Director Finch?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And Chair Aegis.
Yes. And thank you. Okay, the next item are the action items. Action item 8A is election of officers. We haven't done this, I believe we did it 4 years ago. I'm not absolutely certain, but we did it at the beginning of each year. And currently, Director Finch is the vice chair and I'm the chair. So I will entertain nominations for those two positions.
I would nominate Richard Hodges for chair.
And Jim, do you want to stay the vice chair?
Not really, but
Are we waiting for a second on that?
A second or another nomination?
I'll second Richard's nomination.
Thank you.
I'll second Jim's nomination.
You can call the roll.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Finch,
yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes?
Director Filkey,
Yes.
Chair Aegis.
Yes.
We should have voted no.
Yeah.
Wait, I need to see.
Two of the most coveted positions in
In the valley.
I moved his, and
I move Jim.
Bob seconded Richard's.
And Whitman.
Yes, and Peter,
Yes. And Peter,
and Peter seconded.
thank you very much.
Seconded Jim. Mhm.
Nobody else left?
That's it's about the truth, isn't it? Okay, the next item, thank you for your confidence. We're willing to pass the buck. The next item is item 8B.
So this is one of the well applications that I was mentioning. You can see in the attachments that the DBSNA report was going to be provided ahead of time. That is not ready to go So I recommend we take no action on this item.
Questions or comments?
What's the DBSNA?
Sorry, that's the hydrogeologist that they hired to do the well interference and subsidence evaluation that's required by the executive order.
Any comments or questions for the public? Yes.
That's in regards to the well at Orange Road, correct?
Yes.
That's why I'm here.
Yes, please.
My name is Michael Grasso. I know most of you have been up here before. We seem to be having a lot of trouble getting a report from DBSNA that satisfies the requirements. So I'm here to try to learn about how we can streamline that and if there's a better way for us to go about getting that report.
We had a conference call with them on Tuesday. Yes, on Tuesday. With Tony Morgan, and Jordan was on as well as one of his staff, as well as the applicant. And I think we expressed to Tony what was required, that there were some wells missing from the Ventura County database. I think that was the main issue.
That was one,
Yeah.
Yeah, so I got a call from Tony requesting, and I don't know if this got lost in translation somewhere, but he was requesting wells within a 1.5-mile radius of the proposed new well.
Requesting from,
All
The-
the well records from Ventura County.
Sorry, guys. Sorry to interrupt. I don't think the microphone at the podium is on.
oh, is there a button for you to push?
The base, the base of it.
Oh, no, it's a different kind of.
I don't see a button on it.
No, that's
Okay,
not
can you just hang on until maybe we get the audiovisual guy to tell us where the button is?
There is a button that's hidden.
Thank you for pointing that out, Peter.
It is controlled from the back room.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's from the back room, Jim. They use that to cut off speakers who have exceeded their time.
It's either they're 15 minutes.
Well, or 3, or 2, or
That's what I
whatever it
mean.
is. Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine.
He's activating it.
Oh,
We'll just use a different mic.
it might be all right. Jordan,
Can I make any decisions while I'm in this chair?
speak into that. It might.
He just got there.
Testing, testing. This is working now? Sounds like it.
Oh, we got it. Thank you.
Okay, now we're on.
Yeah.
So I got a request from Tony Morgan to get wells within a 1.5-mile radius of our proposed new well, which I got a list from Jeff Dorrington at Ventura County. There's about 300 wells on the list. Obviously, Tony wasn't able to do anything with that in the time frame at hand here. So I'm just wondering if something got lost in translation, if we're actually supposed to be evaluating 300 wells within a radius. Jeff seemed to think that that was a little crazy, as did I.
As would I.
As do I.
Yeah, I don't think anyone was requesting 1.5 miles.
No.
I think,
Yeah, we don't have 300 wells.
yeah, a standard, I mean,
Well,
that's,
but-
because of the location of the proposed well, that's almost every well in the basin. And
Right.
and then some, you're right. And, a more typical radius of concern would be 1,000 feet.
I'm just wondering where this figure came from. Is this something Tony came up with it?
From us.
Oh, okay. What Tony told me, and I might have gotten these wires crossed somehow, he said that you guys were requesting a mile and that he wanted me to do a 1.5 miles.
That radius never was discussed.
Okay. Obviously a miscommunication there then. So I should go back and get a 1,000-foot radius of all the wells and have Tony put those in his report.
They should be able to do that. They're all Latin long based.
Right.
That would come from the county in their database.
Right, and which is where I get it from, and
Yeah.
I was just kind of trying to help nudge it along by getting that.
He should already have it. If it's in 1,000 is less than mile and a half.
What other items need to be amended or included in Tony's report in order for us to get this permit through?
The transmissivity and,
So, yeah, it really stems from the well locations, and then you can check storativity and correlativity between the proposed well perforated interval and those within that 1,000-foot radius. And I think the big one was reference to the GSP as draft. It's obviously been finalized and approved by the DWR. So I think that reference list is outdated, and that should be updated. We can't really act on something that's references this agency's documentation and work product that's out of date.
Sure.
So between those three things, those are the ones that we discussed. I think I find it odd that the well that is being replaced is being destroyed. The other well that is on the property does not have a meter, and yet the condition is that both new well and old well that will remain would be in a condition would be that they both have a meter, but it's an ordinance of this agency to have a meter on that existing well, on all wells.
Sure.
Anyway, so I would argue, and perhaps to deaf ears, that I'd rather see a meter on that well before the well verification goes into play. But that's something for the board to discuss as well. So between those are the four.
The well that's being replaced. Because there's two wells on the property. One of them, they both have their own issues, but one of them is actually supposed to be abandoned, and that was part of the Ventura County stipulation for us to get a well permit from them, and it has to include the abandonment of that well on the same permit.
Yes.
So we were going to abandon that at the same time as we pour our sanitary seal on the new well. The existing well it has I don't know if the casing is parted or broken or collapsed, but it has an obstruction in it. And rather than abandon that we were just going to call that a backup well and basically not use it.
Okay, that's the 40-gallon per minute well?
Yeah, correct.
Okay, yeah, that does need a meter, even as a
Now.
backup well. Now.
Got it.
so a question too is there's 30 acres. What, if that well there is only putting out 40 gallons a minute, is that what's being used for irrigation? Or what is there another source?
No, that is the source.
So 40 gallons a minute is serving 30 acres?
Yeah, but I don't think Calvin has 30 acres that are current.
Nothing on it.
Yeah, it used to be planted, but it's not currently. He has some olive trees, but it's nowhere near 30 acres.
Okay, I have to look back at the application. I thought it was something,
I think
That
that's
magnitude.
proposed.
Yeah,
okay,
It's not what's,
okay.
I don't think any water's being pumped currently.
I don't know how much water Calvin's really putting. He has some olive trees over there. I don't know how much he's putting on them.
Okay,
Probably nothing this time of year.
probably nothing.
Yeah.
Okay,
Okay, so just so I can be clear on everything, we need the 1,000-mile radius.
1,000 miles.
I-
Yes. No, I want to see 1,000
Now
miles.
I'm getting real crazy.
I want to see 1,000 miles.
all the wells in the ocean.
Santa Cruz Island, Anacapa, Santa Rosa.
Yeah, we're going into Texas on that one. And then if you could just summarize those other two action points in one quick sentence for me.
So it's the 1,000-foot radius, the correlative and appropriate transmissivity values or interference. There's references to an updated reference list for this agency, referencing our policies and the GSP, because which they're claiming is compliant. And then, like I say, I'd love to see a meter on that other.
Yeah, got it. So that'll be 4. And the draft you're talking about is something that's available?
It's on our website.
Yeah, so he just needs to
Yep.
update that in his report.
Yes.
Yeah, which incidentally has the locations of the wells we're concerned with
Got it.
as a figure in that map.
Got it. Thank you very much for your time. That
Thank you.
answers all my questions.
All right.
Y'all have a good day.
You
Thank
do.
you.
Thank you, Mike.
You'd be busy on that 1,000 miles.
Jordan, question. Have we adopted any standard of meters? They just, any meter can do and any meter's fine? Or are we gonna come up with some kind of standard where, I don't know, you have 50 different kind of meters out there doing 50 different kind of things.
Right.
You've really only got two different meters that anybody's gonna throw on an ag size well, micrometer and I'm blanking on the other one.
Badger or Hersey.
Yeah, there's much more expensive ones that Casitas uses.
Right.
And there's tons when you get into that, but I don't think we need to spec a meter. They're all, for our purposes, I think they're all as good as anything needs to be.
Yeah, and I would agree, and I think part of our GSP implementation efforts will include what is the make and model of all of these meters, and really how accurate are they? Is there an outlier that's egregiously off, and we should say, hey, thou shalt not use a Triton HC meter because these are all 90% wrong, or whatever the number is. But that's part of what we're going to be doing coming up this coming quarters.
And, I disagree with it with United, because we have to do it every reading. We might just start with, send the picture of the reading once a year. Because it's just like the old Edison meters that were so hard to read. Sometimes you'd misread one time, but it never mattered because it was made up on the next meter read or the next meter read when it's read correctly. So if you underreport one time, as long as you read it right the next time, it catches up and whether it's over or under. And that the picture once a year might be a way to both get the meter, because I think we actually do have to take the meter number and the picture for United, or the reading.
I'm curious for some of the smaller pumpers in United's service area, how compliant they are with getting the pictures.
If you don't send it, they're just like, we need the picture. Because I've missent it before. And
Okay. Well, you can see, this is the first time we've gone through this with this policy, but it took a lot of staff time, took a lot of Peter's time and Jordan's time, so it was expensive. So I think we're gonna have to come up with a policy when these applications come in of having a way to recuperate those costs. We don't have that many, I wouldn't imagine, but they can be pretty expensive. And then on top of that, if they hire a consultant and the consultant doesn't perform, it's, the onus is on us to tell them what's wrong, and that's a problem. So we're just gonna have to keep tweaking this policy as these things come in and we gotta do it, because it was probably a whole year of pumping charges spent on this one application.
Well, we also have to come up with an approach to assessing the sustainability criteria in the governor's executive order, right? Because with each one of these new applications, there's additional demand being put on the basin. And at some point, it's going to be the straw that broke the camel's back. At what point does the additional demand, create problems with regard to achieving sustainability, maintaining sustainability, that sort of thing. So those are questions that I think the board's going to need to wrestle with, not only with this particular application, but, the ones that are coming up in the future.
Okay. Yeah, that's the toughest thing for us to do, but we're gonna have to come up with something. Any other questions or comments? Okay, let's go to item C, financial policy.
So this is a document that I prepared because we have been going through audits and state controller and LAFCO, municipal service reviews, things like that. There was not an adopted financial policy and procedure document. I saw that John Mundy had created a draft, but that it had not been adopted. So I took what he did and as a starting point and tweaked it a little bit, added some more. I guess some of the highlights include the financial reserve piece of it. I don't know if you guys have had enough time to look through it, but that is section 9 towards the end of it, looking to establish kind of a goal of, keeping $100,000 in reserve for things like GSP compliance and outside consultants, things like that come up, that are gonna come up and probably keep coming up. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on it, any feedback or revisions or questions you have about it.
I didn't bring the rest of the financials from last meeting. I wished I had. How long is it gonna take us to accumulate $100,000?
My goal is, I don't know if I put it in here. In that last paragraph, my goal was to look at our balances every month and start putting money basically from checking into savings to try to build that up and try to get that up within the next year or so. That's the goal.
Well, looking at the budget, how feasible is that?
Might take a little longer. It depends, we have the new fee going in as of January 1st. So that first quarter when the statements go out and the cash flow improves a bit. I'm pretty confident it can happen in a year.
But if a year would get you 60,000.
Right.
A year would get you 60, so you're a
Yeah.
year and 2/3 or something.
Yeah.
And you're fighting
If I
against
can
Mother
do-
Nature.
If I can do more, I will.
Well,
And yeah, it certainly,
Yeah,
if we get a
it's-
wet year,
yeah.
then, yeah.
you and Mother Nature are,
We're on the same team.
The numbers are, the better we do, the worse we do.
Yeah.
It's juxtaposed, so.
Well, I went through it in detail, and I think it covers all the bases.
yeah,
And it's our first shot, so I think we may find some things we want to tweak, and I think the last item, or paragraph 10, section 10, this should be something we review and revise on an annual basis, so as things come up, we can make tweaks to this, and it doesn't just get lost somewhere.
okay, do you want a motion for this?
Sure.
I'd move,
Well, before that, are there any other questions or comments? Any from the public? Hearing none, go ahead, Jim.
I'd move we adopt the financial policy statement or whatever
Second.
proper term.
Call the roll?
Director Daddy?
Yes.
Director Whitman?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Filkey?
Yes.
Chair Hayden?
Yes. Okay, item D is financial audits. Julia?
Yeah, these were also a long time coming. They were something that was kind of left behind. So I found our auditor, the firm Fanning and Carr in Ventura, was able to provide them all the information that they needed to get these 2 fiscal year audits done. And if you weren't aware, we only do them we combine 2 years into one audit. So they didn't find any issues, and this was another, LAFCO state controller item that needed to be checked off.
And what was the cost for these 2 audits?
I don't recall. I'll have to get back to you on that.
Okay, and when are we gonna catch up on 2021? Are we gonna
That's the
start
next,
that?
that's the next item on the agenda.
Okay,
Farber Hess.
Any questions or comments on the audits? Any questions or comments from the public? Hearing none, I'll accept a motion to accept the audit.
Yeah, I'll move to accept the audits.
Second.
Call the roll.
Director Daddy,
yes,
Director Whitman,
Yes?
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Filkey,
Yes.
Chair Higgins.
Yes. Okay, the next item is financial audit services for the current period.
Right, so Bob teed me up for this one. So the firm who did the previous ones, she's actually retiring, trying to retire. So this is, our audit was one of the last ones she did. So I did find the firm that I believe OWCD is using for their audits. So I got a proposal from them to do 2 sets of audits again, 2021, 2020 to 2021, and then the 22, 23
No,
audits.
21, 22.
And 22, 23. They're gonna do 2 sets.
Okay, I didn't see that down here.
Oh, did I'm sorry.
No, it's,
You got a typo there.
I think I have typos on the agenda. The memo is right,
memo's right, yeah.
so I apologize for that.
No.
So it should be for the 2020, 21, and also for the 2022, 23, as shown on the memo. And their fee is $17,500 for 2, basically, we're getting 2 audits out of it. In case other issues come up, I'd like to pad that a little bit with a contingency for a budget of 20,000.
So that's for 4 years.
Yes.
Any other questions or comments? Comments by the public? Pleasure of the board.
Move that we accept?
Second?
Call the roll.
Director Daddy,
Yes.
Director Whitman,
Yes?
Director Finch,
Yes.
Director Filkey,
Yes.
Chair Higgins.
Yes. Okay, item F. There's 2 items in there, I guess. This is a result of last meeting, we had a discussion of forming a committee to talk about how we come up with a enforcement policy and a strategy for doing that. I suppose the first thing is how badly do we need that? How many wells are out there that are not reporting, and then what size are they?
We did a little scrub of the database, and it, again, we have database issues, and some things need to be updated, but I think there's 50 to 60 of our pumpers that do not have meters on them that need to. So I think we need to prioritize and go after who we think the larger ones might be. And again, it's gonna take some research and time. You know, CC and I and Tar, we're all part-time on this. It's a big, effort, but I think that we can make progress and just start biting off on them. And, have that, get that committee to assist with developing the policies. And, there are penalties, all of that, we need to probably present. And again, like every case is different. We have some, if you open up, a file in the office, you'll see some had meters and then all of a sudden they didn't. And we don't know what happened. Then they just started putting numbers in. So we have a lot of cases like that. Each one is gonna take some effort to go through the history and calling, making sure we have the right contact person, finding out what's going on, with them. It's gonna take some effort. It's totally doable. But it is kind of a long-term thing with that many that are out of compliance.
Do we need a policy first? If we're going to
I mean, we have an ordinance that says all the meters need to be, or all the wells need to be metered. It's just a matter of prioritizing, going through and seeing what their history is, and maybe presenting those to the committee, talking with that pumper and seeing what their issues are to get them in compliance. You know, imposing penalties is another, you know, we have that ability. You know, we need to bring those to the committee to see when it's appropriate.
Peter, is
Peter?
there time for discussion?
No, go ahead.
Pete, before the meeting, this came up a little unofficially. Is there a way to put on title the fact that for all APNs within the OBGMA boundary, so that when they get their title report, they know that they are within the OBGMA boundary and responsible?
Interesting question. I'm sure speak out of turn. I'd like to think there would be a process to be able to do that, with regard to, every property. It would require, I think, a recordation of some sort of notice. So the process that we need to go through, first identifying all the APNs, and then, working with the county recorder's office to record such a notice.
Actually, now that you say that, I realize you don't need to record it against we have the list. It's all of our pumps. It's all the wells. Those are the only properties that need it, actually.
Right, just the parcels with wells.
Yeah.
I mean, could somebody have a
I'm
parcel
wondering if
that
there
doesn't
might
have
be-
a well, and we need to let them know that if they do drill a well, they have to be in compliance?
Well, no, because they're gonna come to us for that, so.
True.
I mean,
I'm wondering if there might be a more direct, simpler process to go through the assessor's office. Not the recorder's office, but the assessor's office, and then have something possibly on the annual assessment reports that are sent out to property owners indicating they're within the OBGMA and are subject to all the rules, regulations, fees, everything else. Anyway, it deserves looking into. I don't have a specific answer for you right now
okay.
as to, the best way
Right.
to do that.
No, understood. And I guess that's why we're talking ad hoc.
And I would think that we're not the first groundwater management agency that's been addressing this issue. And, actually, I looked for this small groundwater association that Andy was talking about, and I didn't see it on the internet, but it seems like we could work with other smaller jurisdictions and see if they have programs and for meeting compliance and if their programs are any good.
Yeah.
And gather suggestions from other folks to develop a policy from.
I can reach out to Brian Bondi and ask him about that small GSA organization.
But the concept is essentially, what would be the appropriate mechanism for these folks to all have official notice that they are within the OBGMA jurisdiction and subject to OBGMA rules and regulations? Is that what you're thinking about?
Yes. Yes, I guess there's the first shot, just make sure everybody knows, but then there's also there's a right to farm ordinance that when anything sells in certain areas is supposed to go on, in the sale package.
Right, right, yeah.
And it's not recorded, but it somehow goes through the sale package.
Is that like escrow?
Yeah, I should say through.
Interesting. I mean, I can look at that pretty easily to find out what that mechanism is. See if that might be something that, would work for us.
Okay.
But where you started on this was the ad hoc thought process.
Yes. Yeah, if there's a desire for the board to form a committee and anyone interested in being on that committee.
If there is, I'll work on the meter, or on that side of that one, whatever it's called.
Yeah, that would be good. You have a better understanding of it than most of us.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
The metering issues are way beyond my understanding, so if I'm gonna participate on one of these committees, it would be better in the legislative end of things.
Well, if no one else wants to do it, I'll work with Jim on it, so. Okay. I don't think we have to take a formal action, but Jim and I are the ad hoc meter and compliance committee, I guess. Team, yes. Okay, the next one is the legislative committee, and this is an ad hoc committee, so Peter can tell us the rules, but it can't be too broad. So you have to have a specific task that you're going to try to achieve, or specific problem you're gonna deal with. You can't go off into, we probably have a lot of legislative issues, but dealing with this new group would probably be a good thing. You could learn some things and maybe get enough other people together that when you do approach legislators, it's not just us. Andy, you have an interest in doing that?
Yeah, I could do that, and I also thought that this, fit, what we talked about a couple of meetings ago with the idea that, there's a problem with the expense of doing our groundwater sustainability report juxtaposed to the people who are paying for it. And my understanding, there's been efforts in the past to try to get the state to ease up on that, and it's been refused, but, maybe a new effort with new ideas, working with these other agencies. Because it seems to me, and I think Jordan would be much better able to talk about it, but that if you're not in overdraft consistently, that you ought to be able to come up with some type of a short form as opposed to this really long form.
No.
And get that submitted, and, maybe do the big report every 10 years and do really short reports in the interim. Maybe it could be dependent on the size of the groundwater basin and the number of people they serve. That's my thought. I don't know that we got to convince both the state and the legislators probably on that issue.
Yeah, I think the other issue is it necessary to take 20 years to reach sustainability? I mean, this basin's in pretty good condition, and we have an enormous amount of data already, so there aren't that many areas that we need to have fill data gaps. I mean, we're always wrestling with the surface water, groundwater interaction, but that's really the toughest one for us. So why do we have to spend $250,000 every 5 years to just check the boxes that we've already accomplished? Anyone else interested in joining Andy to see if we can move this thing? Bob?
Peter, well, if, Peter, you want to do that? If you don't want to do it, I'll volunteer.
Well, I'm just pretty consumed with my company, Senior Canyon, right now with what we're facing. So I hesitate to commit, but I would certainly be willing to attend an introductory meeting with Andy and then see where that went and just see what kind of time commitment.
Okay.
So Bob will be the alternate if you decide you don't want to do it. Is that fair?
Small board. And one of the things that I would hope we do, and those are great ideas, but again, we're selling less than 3,000 acre feet of water. Our reports are more expensive than the water we sell, and we're gouging the farmers.
Right.
And they're having to pay for something that hasn't changed in 32, 33, 34 years. So if it's 20 years to get sustainability, we've done that 1.5 times. And so we've not come close on any issues. And so, yeah, maybe Bennett will help us with this.
I would think Steve Bennett would be interested, given his, his
Connection to the valley.
well, and SOAR,
Yeah.
One of the goals of SOAR was to keep farmers farming the land, and so if we're creating, a situation that hurts their ability to be sustainable as farmers, I would think Steve would be interested in keeping them going. We all should be.
Didn't they do an alternate demonstration in the beginning?
Yes, we prepared an alternative demonstration of sustainability, which I think the timing was tough with the litigation and other issues. But, and this is maybe a Peter Candy question, is could we just do that again? Instead of issuing a groundwater sustainability plan update, shift gears to demonstrating that we are sustainable, like shift to the alternative demonstration. And it could be a question for the DWR, the reviewers or the regulators at play, to see, can we do that? Knowing that we're going to be monitoring these constituents, these surface water flows in and out, and shallow groundwater, then we have our moratorium on or actually our requirement to seal off anything in the southwestern uppermost saturated zone. There's not much more you can do to avoid the undesirable result of negative surface water groundwater interaction.
Well, but that's, I think, one of the things where we don't have pinch points in our GSP. And I think that's one of the things that probably gave them pause. At X 20%, at Y 30%. But, and maybe, but the discussion, we are so in balance. My point and what we talked about earlier is similar to Peter, is while we are above, while you're above C in this very good zone, you should be exempted from the big reports. Maybe you submit the numbers, or we pay for the report to be once, and then we updated the tables until we cross below.
Yeah.
Fill in the blank from a geological standpoint, not from me saying 50%, but
something.
No pun intended, but the discussion's kind of going into item 9A.
Yeah, it is.
Honestly.
It's all right.
Okay. I
Yeah,
shall.
no, which is fine, which is
Let's-
fine. I just,
Officially go into that.
Yes, let's do that.
And Chair, I thought we spent like $350,000, not $250 on this last sustainability report.
No, the 5-year budget, I think, is around two.
I know the budget, but
Well, no,
did- did-
the
no.
plan itself costs 400,000 or something like
Okay.
that.
and we bring in 200,000 a year. And I'm just saying, we need some dramatic relief.
Well, I think one of the things that we should consider is a sticky point. And that's the one, when do we say, or do we say you can't drill any more wells? Or we say you can't pump a certain amount of water if we do allocations if the level goes below a certain point. It's a tough thing to address. But I think we can satisfy a lot of this because the basin, we know, automatically regulates itself. When it goes below a certain point, you can't pump very much water. And there are few properties harmed because almost everyone has casitas as a backup. And that's one of the things in the state's concern, is that somebody has no water as a result of over pumping. So if we can begin to work out the details of a conjunctive use agreement with casitas, where they can take advantage of pumping during periods like they currently have, and then they can cut back when the basin goes below a certain point, so that we're not pulling it down to an undesirable level. So I think there's really room there for an agreement that would be beneficial to both casitas and the private pumpers. We started to work on that, and then the adjudication came about and it kind of fell apart. But I think that's a way we can demonstrate to the state, we do have a plan to curtail pumping when we start to approach that, minimum level that we want to avoid. And we have information now too. I think that model we did, even in the driest years, there's still water coming into the basin. So, there can always be some pumping. Anyway, I think that if we can solve that to their satisfaction, I think that's a way we could get out from under a lot of this, because we don't have seawater intrusion, we don't have subsidence, the water quality is pretty good, and all we have to do is monitor it to make sure it stays that way. And then we deal with the surface water, groundwater interaction, and we've got a good start on it.
Were you on 9A?
Yeah.
I didn't know when it flowed.
Yeah. Any other comments? Any comments from the public?
I think this guy has, next to me has something he'd like to share that kind of addresses Jordan.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, we've talked a bit about this. This was sort of the distillation of of a previous sort of ad hoc committee of conjunctive use discussions. But we had a table that we had precipitation on one column with the condition of the San Antonio Creek spreading. I gotta get back into Zoom. Past calendar year and the trends, and sort of how much should we extract from the basin and how much should we ask for casitas. And if it pleases the board, it can take a minute and share this on Zoom.
Sure.
So, give me a minute here. And it was the result of several meetings, but this is where it was left before the adjudication and such came into play. This guy. All right, can everybody see this okay-ish? Not really.
I can see it's on the board.
Yeah. This is closer to me and my age.
Yeah, that is not a one that's made for,
Yeah. So let me, but fortunately, we can get in there. So let's do this. But at least this will give you an idea about where the discussion group was. So on the top bolds, it was how much precipitation did we have? What was the SAS group doing? What was the past calendar year basin low? What is the trend? Like, for example, this year, expecting wetting to stable. Key well spring high, we actually put footage on this, so if the spring high was less than 50 feet and the past calendar year was less than 100 feet, like we have now, Casitas drought stage was 1, Palmer drought stage, moderately moist to extremely moist, again now. San Antonio Creek surface water discharge at peak, greater than 10 CFS flow out of the basin. So we had all of these criteria that we established in this ad hoc committee, and this is, again, 5 years ago now. But the idea is that we came out with actions and suggested extraction per well. The idea being that under that really wet condition, groundwater was the first. It would be safe to exceed basin safe yield. For example, Bob, as you and I were talking earlier before the meeting, 10,000 acre feet. Suggested extraction per well would be a maximum capacity, 5,000 acre feet. Take what you can because it's there. As we go down the list and things get drier, the next one would be groundwater remaining primary, target exactly the extraction of a safe yield of 5,000, and establish baseline years, mimic Ojai's 2,000 acre feet, for example, out of the community facilities district. We use CMWD, but it was CMWD Ojai. All the way down to where we are extracting 40% of a baseline year. And that's where we're in the 2,000 acre feet total extraction. And as we've discussed, it's sort of inverse. When you've got all the water, you're not pumping the water. And the drawback of that is multifold. Revenue for the agency decreases. There's less available storage capacity in the basin for storms and spreading water and accepting recharge. There's a lot more rejected recharge, and it escapes toward the ocean. But it's not there for tomorrow either. And that's where this comes into play. So I for one, would be happy to join in and continue these discussions and work off of this, this 5-year-old effort.
why don't we bring this back with this being distributed to all directors for the next one?
In big letters.
Well, up close in my glasses that actually do something.
Poster board.
All right, yeah. We can print it out on 11 by 17s or 17 by 22s or you name it. But this was a good distillation, I think, of that effort that Mundy and Baggerly and I, and John and Richard, I think, was involved in that to some degree too, back then. So let's pick it back up.
All right,
Call that.
So we titled this a storage and action table for conjunctive use.
all right, thank you, Jordan. Bob?
Jordan, could you put 2 footnotes in there when you do this? The last year that we pumped 4,000 and then the last year that we pumped 5,000 acre feet. I mean, we had plenty of water, so we didn't pump. But we had plenty of years that we pumped because it was dry. So I'd kind of like to see some history going back into the 5,000 or higher acre feet so we can figure out, you know, really where our capacity is.
Yeah, I think part and parcel with this and that idea is a histogram of total extractions per year.
Yes, that's where I was thinking, just let it see how it's trending.
Yeah.
So just keep in mind, again, that it's based on what people report on their statements.
Yes, yes.
And maybe an annual rainfall right next to that one that shows extraction per year, rainfall for a year, so we can just kind of look at those 2 lines.
And people report minimum used of half of an acre foot, which is possibly non-existent.
Yeah, but it won't.
Half an acre foot is,
There's a lot of half and a acre.
oh, no, I know that. If there's a ton of half acre foot,
So
it's
that's
not
2
very
acre-feet
much.
a year.
Anything else? Okay, if there's no other comments, meeting is adjourned at 4:12.
One of your longer meetings, for me, longest meeting of the year.
All right, thanks, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks.
Thank you, Peter.
See this, Peter? Have you seen one of those?
That's exactly what you wanted, right?
Looks like a robot.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what it is, yeah. Now I see, get it.
I've never seen one.
You going skiing?
Yes, Monday.
I just got back from Park City
Oh, do you?
Monday, yeah. You know, they've got a nice base, but nothing, they're avalanching big time, cause the ice, the new snow was probably ice. But they need, now they need, it's fine, now just keep snow.
Yeah. Yeah, well, they got 50-inch base
Yeah.
up there, and they got about a foot in this last,
Mhm.
and it's not very crowded, so.
Yeah, no, that was the thing, this was our first trip during Sundance. And you don't go into town, but the mountain was fine. Nobody skis, they're all just there to be seen.
Yeah, right.
80 feet of ground subsidence right into
I do
Larry
need some
Lake, and
signatures.
it's like,
Okay.
we don't have any.
Thanks, Jim. No, I was just,
No, yeah.
I had to talk with Cece.
Over there, right?
That's what Sigma was intended to do.
You know, handle the big thing.
This is the.
And now everybody's in a freaking flood zone
Auditors.
because they went down 150 feet at base
Oh.
flood elevation.
Oh, yeah, just so I can get them going.
Ag/geologist on the front end.
Here, right?
Front end needs $500 million.
Management, signature, and governance.
That'd be good.
Oh, your governance, I'll be the manager.
And his comment was just tell Bakersfield to pump more so they subside equal.
So then the whole
Put the
thing
lift
is
station
gonna,
at a lower elevation.
the whole thing
I'll
is
take-
gonna roll,
Meeting.
right?
I'll take this with me.
Minutes.
I'll take this with me, Cece, and I'll sign it and I'll scan it.
Thank you.
The differential settlement,
It's got a bow.
when your whole house settles evenly, there's no problem.
No problem.
You get a cracked foundation is the problem.
Exactly.
Do you know what the FEMA rule is?
No, not a legal term.
Third claim,
What's that?
And I think there's Bruno Moss. No, yes.
to go 4 feet
No,
above
there's
base
two more.
flood elevation,
So
which would be 85
like it
feet
in
in
here.
the air in some of these small little towns.
Ask for your autograph, isn't it?
Yeah.
was
It's true.
my house
Too.
approved just
It looks
before
kind of
Katrina.
like you're
So I was 4 feet above, but when I was approved,
signing a book signing or an actor or
because I
not.
had
I
2
signed
feet
a
of fall from front to back, so I could step my house down midway, then they eliminated that, so if my house were approved now, it would be
Auditions
6
we
feet
did,
high in the
when
back.
I used to work, and it had to be done, because it was a bid, and it had to be done in
That's what,
25 minutes.
you know, but it's all based on,
Wow.
And they had this giant table
New Orleans.
with the copy all the way.
Keep going next to next.
3%
And from then on, my signatures never got.
Okay.
Have a good one.
That's why you don't make America Florida again.
I like that pen.
Yeah, that's a astronaut's pen.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it'll write upside down underwater and
Oh, my
pretty
gosh.
cool.
We had